The woman who made America laugh died almost completely alone, and nobody saw it coming. Lucille Ball. You know the name. You've seen the reruns. The red hair, the wide eyes, the crazy stunts on I Love Lucy that had families across America crying with laughter every single week. She was the biggest star on television, the first woman to run her own studio, and someone who changed entertainment forever. But here's what they never told you. Behind all that fame, behind every smile and every joke, there was a woman who slowly lost everyone she loved. By the time she died in 1989, the queen of comedy was living in a silence so heavy it would break your heart. This isn't the story Hollywood wants you to remember, but it's the truth. And it starts way before the cameras ever turned on. Lucille was only 3 years old when death first knocked on her door. Her father, Henry Ball, was just 27 when he got sick with typhoid fever and died. One day she had a daddy who loved her, and the next day he was gone forever. Can you imagine being that young and losing the person who made you feel safe? Her mother was destroyed. Her whole family fell apart. They had no money, no plan, and suddenly Lucille and her little brother were being sent away to live with other relatives. She was passed around like a package nobody really wanted to keep. That kind of childhood does something to you. It teaches you that people leave. It teaches you not to get too comfortable. And it makes you build walls so high that even love has a hard time climbing over them. As she grew up, Lucille became tough. Not mean, but strong in a way that came from pain. She didn't cry about what she lost. She just decided she was going to make something of herself no matter what. At 15, she moved to New York City to become an actress. 15 years old, alone in the biggest city in America, with almost nothing in her pocket. Most people would have given up in a week, but not Lucille. She enrolled in acting school, ready to prove everyone wrong. Except the teachers didn't believe in her. They told her she had no talent. They said she should go home. One instructor even called her too shy and awkward to ever make it in show business. Imagine hearing that when you've already lost so much. But instead of quitting, Lucille got angry. She used that anger as fuel. She started working as a model, taking any gig she could find, anything to stay in the game. She posed for posters, she worked in stores, she did whatever it took to survive. And slowly, very slowly, she started getting small acting roles. Hollywood didn't roll out the red carpet for Lucille Ball. For years, she was just another face in the crowd. She played tiny parts in movies, usually as the friend or the background character that nobody remembered. Studios called her the queen of the B-movies, which was not a compliment. It meant she was good enough to work, but not good enough to be a star. And that stung, but Lucille kept grinding. She showed up early, stayed late, learned everything about cameras and lighting and timing. She studied the way comedians worked, the way they made people laugh, the way they controlled a scene. She was building herself into something powerful, even if nobody else could see it yet. Then in 1940, everything shifted when she met a Cuban bandleader named Desi Arnaz. He was handsome, charming, talented, and completely different from anyone she'd ever known. They met on a movie set and the chemistry was instant. It was wild, electric, the kind of love that makes you feel alive and terrified at the same time. They got married quickly, maybe too quickly, but they were crazy about each other. Desi made Lucille laugh in a way nobody else ever had. He saw her not as a struggling actress, but as a star waiting to explode. And Lucille saw him as someone who finally understood her drive, her hunger, her need to be more than what the world said she could be. But their marriage was never easy. Desi toured with his band constantly, and Lucille was always working on movie sets. They spent months apart. The distance created cracks. Desi started drinking more. There were rumors about other women. Lucille felt the loneliness creeping back in, that same feeling from childhood, the fear that people you love will eventually leave you. Everything changed in 1951 when they created I Love Lucy. This wasn't just another TV show. This was revolution. Lucille and Desi fought the network to film in front of a live audience, to use 3 cameras, to shoot in Los Angeles instead of New York. The executives thought they were insane, but they were right. I Love Lucy became the biggest show on television almost overnight. 40 million people tuned in every week to watch Lucy Ricardo get into ridiculous situations. America fell in love with her. She was funny, relatable, real. Women saw themselves in her. Kids loved her. Even men who didn't usually watch TV would sit down for I Love Lucy. And behind the scenes, Lucille was running everything. She wasn't just the star. She was the producer, the boss, the one making decisions that shaped the entire show. Along with Desi, she built Desilu Studios, which became one of the most powerful production companies in Hollywood. They were unstoppable together. On screen, they were the perfect couple. But off-screen, things were falling apart. The pressure was crushing. They were working 16-hour days, raising two kids, running a business, and trying to hold their marriage together. Desi's drinking got worse. The rumors about his cheating weren't just rumors anymore. Lucille knew. She knew, and it was killing her inside. But she couldn't stop working. The show had to go on. The studio had to keep running. Millions of people depended on them. So she smiled for the cameras and cried in private. She threw herself into her work even harder, because work was the only thing that didn't abandon her. Work was the one thing she could control. But you can't work your way out of heartbreak. In 1960, after nearly 20 years together, Lucille and Desi divorced. It was one of the most painful moments of her life. She didn't just lose a husband. She lost her partner, her creative soulmate, the one person who had believed in her when nobody else did. And even though the divorce was the right choice, it left a hole in her that never really healed. After the divorce, Lucille kept working. She had to. I Love Lucy ended, but she started new shows. The Lucy Show, Here's Lucy. She stayed on television for years, still making people laugh, still proving she could do it. But something had changed. The joy wasn't the same. The laughter felt a little more forced. People around her started noticing that she was harder to work with, more demanding, less patient. Some said she became cold. But maybe she wasn't cold. Maybe she was just protecting herself. Maybe after losing so much, she decided it was safer to keep people at a distance. Her kids, Lucy and Desi Jr., grew up and started their own lives. Her mother passed away. Friends from the old days moved on or drifted apart. Lucille remarried in 1961 to a man named Gary Morton, a comedian who was younger than her. He was kind and supportive, but even he couldn't break through all her walls. She kept him at arm's length emotionally, never fully letting him in the way she had with Desi. It was like she had decided that loving someone completely was too dangerous, too painful. So she loved her work instead. As the years went on, Hollywood started changing. New stars came up. Younger faces filled the screens. The kinds of shows people wanted to watch were different now. Lucille was still respected, still a legend, but she wasn't the center of attention anymore. And for someone who had spent decades in the spotlight, that was hard. Really hard. She tried to adapt. In 1986, at 75 years old, she agreed to star in a new sitcom called Life with Lucy. She was excited. She thought this was her big comeback, her chance to show everyone that she still had it. But the show failed. It was canceled after just 8 episodes. The reviews were brutal. Critics said she was too old, that the show was outdated, that it was sad to watch. Those words crushed her. After everything she had accomplished, after everything she had given to television, this is how it ended. With rejection, with failure, with people saying she should have stayed retired. After that, Lucille stepped away from the public eye. She stopped doing interviews. She stopped going to events. She stayed home most days, in her big house in Beverly Hills that suddenly felt way too empty. She had money, she had awards, she had a legacy that would last forever. But none of that keeps you company at night. Her health started declining. She had always been a fighter, always pushed through pain and exhaustion. But age catches up with everyone. Her energy faded. Her body started breaking down. And even though she had people around her, staff and family members who checked in, the truth was that she spent more and more time alone. Sitting in her living room, watching old episodes of her shows, remembering when the world felt full instead of empty. On April 18, 1989, something went terribly wrong. Lucille felt a sharp pain in her chest and collapsed. She was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. The doctors discovered that her aorta had ruptured, which is one of the most dangerous medical emergencies you can have. They immediately took her into surgery, a 7-hour operation to try to save her life. It was intense. It was risky, but the doctors managed to repair the damage. For a few days, it looked like she might actually pull through. She was recovering. She was talking to her family. There was hope. But then, 8 days later, on April 26th, disaster struck again. Her abdominal aorta ruptured. This time, there was nothing the doctors could do. Despite their best efforts, despite all the technology and skill in that hospital, Lucille Ball died that morning. She was 77 years old. The news shocked the world. Millions of people who grew up watching her felt like they had lost someone from their own family. Tributes poured in from everywhere. Other celebrities shared their memories. Fans cried. But here's the thing that most people don't realize. By the time she died, Lucille's world had become incredibly small. The woman who once had the whole country paying attention to her every move had quietly withdrawn from almost everyone. Her funeral was private, much smaller than you would expect for someone so famous. There were no massive crowds, no huge public memorial, just a small group of family and close friends saying goodbye to someone who, despite all her success, had spent her final years in a kind of loneliness that's hard to even describe. So why did this happen? How does someone so loved, so celebrated, so talented end up so alone? The answer is complicated, but it starts with understanding who Lucille Ball really was underneath the costumes, and the makeup, and the characters she played. She was someone who learned early that love can disappear in an instant, that people leave, that pain is guaranteed, but happiness is not. So she protected herself the only way she knew how. She worked. She built walls. She kept moving forward because stopping meant feeling everything she had buried. Her career became her identity. When you spend decades being Lucille Ball the star, it's hard to just be Lucille the person. And when that career starts fading, when the spotlight dims, what's left? The truth is, fame doesn't keep you warm. Awards don't have conversations with you. Money can't hold your hand when you're scared. Lucille had all of those things, but what she needed was connection. Real, deep, messy, complicated human connection. The kind that requires vulnerability. The kind that means letting people see you without the armor. And that was the one thing she could never quite do. Not after Desi, not after all the losses. She had learned to perform love, to show affection in controlled ways, but she struggled to truly let people in. Her daughter Lucy said years later that her mother was incredibly loving, but also incredibly guarded. That she could be warm and funny and generous. But there was always a part of her that stayed hidden, a part that nobody was allowed to touch. As Lucille got older, that isolation intensified. It's a pattern you see with a lot of famous people from that era. They build their entire identity around their career, and when that career ends, they don't know who they are anymore. The parties stop. The phone calls become less frequent. The people who surrounded you when you were on top suddenly have other places to be. It's not always intentional. People move on with their lives. They get busy. They assume you're fine because you're famous and successful. But fame doesn't cure loneliness. Sometimes it makes it worse because you're surrounded by people who want something from you, who see you as Lucille Ball the icon instead of a real person who needs friendship and love and support. In those final years, Lucille would sit in her house and watch her old shows. Can you imagine that? Being able to turn on the TV and see yourself young, beautiful, full of energy, making people laugh until they cried. And then looking in the mirror and seeing someone completely different. Someone older, tired, carrying decades of pain and loss. It must have been heartbreaking. She had given everything to make other people happy, and in the end, she couldn't figure out how to make herself happy. That's the tragedy, not that she died, because we all die eventually. The tragedy is that she died feeling alone after spending her whole life bringing joy to others. When you really think about Lucille Ball's story, it's not just about a famous actress. It's about what happens when you build your life around one thing and lose sight of everything else. It's about how childhood wounds can shape every decision you make for the rest of your life. It's about the price of fame and the cost of protecting yourself so well that nobody can reach you anymore. Lucille Ball made history. She broke barriers. She created art that will be remembered forever. But she also paid a price that most people never see. And maybe that's the lesson here, that success and happiness are not the same thing, that you can have the whole world cheering for you and still feel completely alone, that the relationships you build and maintain matter more than any award or achievement. Because when everything else fades, when the cameras stop rolling and the audience goes home, what you're left with is the people who truly know you. And if you've spent your whole life keeping those people at a distance, well, that's when the real loneliness begins. Lucille Ball deserved better. She deserved to spend her final years surrounded by love and laughter, the same gifts she gave to millions of strangers. Instead, she spent them in silence, in a big empty house, remembering what used to be. That's the truth Hollywood doesn't want you to know. That's the story behind the legend. Drop a comment below if this story changed how you see Lucille Ball forever.